Once upon a time, in a vast and sandy desert where the stars shone like scattered diamonds on velvet, there lived a mapmaker named Nora. Now, Nora was an expert in her craft, and her compasses were renowned throughout the land for their accuracy. Travelers from distant lands would come to her seeking a compass that would never fail them, and she would imbue each one with a tiny piece of her magic, ensuring it would guide them safely to their destination. But there was one place that Nora's magic could not reach, and that was her own heart. You see, many years ago, Nora had made a terrible mistake. She had led her closest friend astray, and as punishment, she had sworn never to leave her workshop in the town of El Azar. Since then, she had buried herself in her work, creating compass after compass, each one a tiny masterpiece. One day, a terrible sandstorm swept across the desert, burying the one oasis that had sustained travelers for generations. Without the oasis, those journeying across the desert would surely perish. And soon, desperate travelers began showing up at Nora's door, each with a tale of woe and each in need of a compass to guide them home. But when Nora imbued these compasses with her magic, they spun wildly, unable to pierce the veil of the sandstorm. There must be another way, said a young nomad named Tariq, who had journeyed far to find Nora. He explained that his tribe had followed Nora's maps for many years, but this storm was unlike any they had ever seen. Surely there is something more you can do, he pleaded. Nora looked at the young man and saw the hope and fear in his eyes. For a moment, she considered telling him the truth about her past, but she could not bring herself to do it. Instead, she looked down at her own compass, which also spun wildly. An idea struck her like a bolt of lightning. "You said my compasses spin wildly," she said, looking up at Tariq. "But what if my shadow does not?" The young man looked confused, but he agreed to follow Nora's shadow. They stepped out of the house and into the blinding wind. Nora shielded her eyes and squinted against the sand. In the distance, she saw something strange. What looked like a dark, distorted version of herself seemed to be walking ahead of her, moving away from the swirling mass of the sandstorm. At first, it was hard to tell, but as Nora focused on her shadow, she realized it was pointing towards a faint opening in the storm. With renewed hope, Nora followed her shadow deeper into the heart of the desert. The wind screamed around her, and she could feel the sand tearing at her clothes and stinging her skin. But she pressed on, driven by a sense of purpose she had not felt in years. And then suddenly, just